Welcome to Homeschool Today. I'm Andrea Johns, and today we are going to be talking about tips and tricks to know when your kids are ready to take standardized tests. When we started this series, it was only going to be a 3-part series. The first part covered standardized test history, the second covered pros and cons of testing, and the third covered the test options available to homeschooling families. After hearing some feedback, we decided this needed to be a 4-part series so that we could do an episode to cover test tips and tricks that I've learned over the years to make testing better and less stressful. Nearly half of all states in the U.S. require some sort of standardized testing for homeschoolers or allows standardized testing as an option for providing academic progress. If you live in one of these states, knowing how to prepare your child for testing is important. Even if you live in a state with no requirements for testing, it is possible that your child will one day need to participate in testing such as the ACT or the SAT when they are looking to go to college. If your child hasn't had to take standardized testing yet, you may be unsure how to get started or what your options are. Your state level and local support groups should be able to answer most questions you have that are specific to your state. This being said, there are many tips and tricks that I've used over the years or have had friends use over the years that have made the process less stressful and made for a better test experience for our kids. Tip number 1, tell your child about the test. It's important to let them know what is being tested and why. Just as important, it is to tell them in an age-appropriate and non-anxiety-causing manner. Some kids hear the word test and immediately suffer panic attacks. Other kids hear the word test and they get excited as they're up for the challenge and a chance to prove what they know. And yet others don't really care one way or another. It's important to understand where your kids are on the spectrum so you can keep them informed without overwhelming them and giving them anxiety. Tip number 2, explain to your children what the test will look like. For younger children without any prior experience in testing, you may need to explain the concept of multiple choice questions. There are many free online tests that you can use as samples when explaining this idea to them. Be sure to tell them what types of items will be tested. If you're testing math, reading, and vocabulary, tell them. If it will include science and social science and listening, let them know that too. When children know what to expect, it naturally calms them during test time. Tip number 3, don't stress or make a big deal out of testing. If you're calm and relaxed about the testing, it will be reassuring to your children. If you know you will need to test and your child has never tested, I suggest that you have a practice run with a standardized test when it doesn't matter. This can be a test that you administer at home. If the standardized test you need to take at year end is timed, be sure that your practice test is timed as well. If you have other families to test with, it might closer mirror the group setting that you will be taking your test in at the end of the year. This can make kids more comfortable as well. Some states only require testing every other year in the early grades. If this applies to you, then testing your children at the end of the year prior to a test year can be a great approach as well. Tip number 4, work with your kids on how to clearly read and understand directions. In my experience, half the issues with testing we have experienced could have been eliminated if my kids had slowed down to read the directions carefully instead of rushing to answer the questions. They would have done much better on the test had they done so. Tip number 5, explain the concept of bubbling clearly to your children and have them practice it. I had a child one year who didn't follow the process I am about to share with you. He was about 9 at the time and not very familiar with standardized tests. What happened is he misbubbled on question 5 of about 30. He put the answer to number 5 in the line of bubbles that was for question 6. So when he got to question 30, there were no bubbles left to fill in. He panicked, but was afraid to ask for help. Needless to say, all the answers after test 4 were wrong. We learned an important lesson that day. First, the test results didn't really matter. We knew they would be really bad and not give a true picture of what he knew. He only got 4 correct, but we knew that was the most that he could get because of the error. We took the approach of it being a lesson in bubbling and laughed it off with him so he wouldn't have test anxiety when the tests came around next year. Here is the process we developed for all our kids after this issue for ensuring that they would never have that type of issue again. As the child is testing, have them read the number of the question and then look at the test sheet to see that the next question on the answer sheet waiting to be bubbled matches the number of the question they are about to read. If it does, then they continue. If not, they can raise their hand and ask for help. Assuming that they were good, they can read the question and the answers. Once they have chosen an answer, look back at the number of the question and match it to the number on the answer sheet and bubble their answer. One last time, verify that the number of the question they answered matches the number they just bubbled. If it matches, move on. If it doesn't, erase the line that is misbubbled and then correctly bubble. If this is followed each time, they can never be off by more than one answer. Tip number 6. Prepare your children for the unexpected. Unless you're actually teaching to the test, it is not likely that your kids will know all the answers on the test. It is even possible that they won't have ever heard of the material of some of the questions. Tell them that this could happen, and it's okay. You as the parent can advise them whether to guess or leave the answer blank. Here's what the verbiage from the Iowa test says. They say that students should not guess if they do not know the answer because random guessing compromises the validity of the scores. However, the Iowa assessment score is calculated based only on the number of correct answers. The student is not penalized for incorrect answers. Many times children, particularly older children, may have limited knowledge on a topic that has come not from direct studies. This can come through other subjects, or chasing down a rabbit hole in their studies, or reading about topics that they touched on in a literature book. If I had a nickel for every time I asked my kids, "How do you know that?" and they responded, "I read about it when I'd be rich. On standardized tests, my children generally followed the rule that if they could eliminate half the answers with certainty, they would work to choose the best answer that was left. They never really guessed, but they did not always know the correct answer with 100% certainty. Again, it is up to you as the parent as to what direction to give your children when these scenarios happen. Tip number 7. Look for clue words in the test questions. Several answers may be good, but which one is the best choice? Watch for words like always, never, most, and least that can trip everyone up when choosing an answer. Tip number 8. I know it's obvious, but sometimes kids forget. Only mark one answer bubble for each question or it will be counted wrong. Don't choose 2 answers if you think it could be both. Narrow it down and choose only one. Fully erase any errors you are correcting and erase any stray marks that you make. This will ensure testing reads correctly. Tip number 9. During the reading comprehension part of the test, always read the questions first, then move on and read the passage. It will tell the student what they are looking for in the passage and make answering the questions easier and quicker at the end. It is common to find an answer midway through the passage and be able to mark the answer before finishing the reading. Tip number 10. The last tip I want to give you is really a list of do's and don'ts for preparing for the test and things to do on test day. These are logical things to do that may slip our minds in the midst of getting out the door to testing. The night before the test, be certain to get a good night's sleep. The morning of the test, eat a good breakfast, but don't eat too much. It can cause fatigue. Drink a good amount of water, and if allowed, have a bottle of water that the student can take to the test with them. Have your child take a simple snack with them for in-between tests when the proctor gives them a break. Make it simple and clean. Something like an apple and some cheese is a perfect option. If testing will be all day, be certain to pack a healthy lunch that your child likes and will eat. Tuck a note in the lunchbox telling them that you're proud of them, just to do their best, and that you love them. This will boost anyone's spirits. Well, that's it. These are 10 simple tips to make standardized testing easier and less stressful for both you and your children. I hope you find at least one thing in the 10 that you can adopt to make your testing experience more positive. Please take a moment and hit the like button at the bottom of the screen. It's what keeps us making these videos. And don't forget the subscribe button and the bell so you will be the first to know as new videos are released. As always, thank you for joining us. And until next time, happy homeschooling.